The massive chamber stretched out like a crystal cathedral made of living light. Thousands of alien beings filled the floating platforms that circled the central speaking area. The air buzzed with strange sounds as creatures from across the galaxy talked in their own languages. Some clicked their teeth, others made singing noises, and a few flashed bright colors on their skin to communicate. Commander Jake Morrison sat in the small human section, trying not to feel tiny compared to the giant aliens around him. His uniform felt stiff and uncomfortable under the bright lights. Next to him sat diplomat Lisa Carter, her face calm but her hands gripped tight in her lap. On his other side, Dr. Alex Bennett kept looking around with wide eyes at all the different alien species. The three humans were the only ones from Earth in this huge place. They had traveled for months just to get here, hoping to join the Galactic Council. But looking around at the massive creatures and their advanced technology, Jake started to worry they had made a mistake. A loud buzzing sound filled the air. The Zephyrian Prime Speaker stood up on his platform. He looked like a giant praying mantis, but his body was covered in shiny metal plates. His forearms moved as he talked, and his big black eyes stared right at the human delegation. "Fellow council members," the Prime Speaker said, his voice coming out of a translator device that made it sound cold and mechanical. "Today we look at a request from a new species. They call themselves humans, and they come from a small blue planet in the outer rim of our galaxy." Jake felt his stomach drop as alien laughter filled the chamber. It was not like human laughter at all. The Zephyrians made clicking sounds with their metal teeth. The tall crystal beings called Vortani rang like bells, and the floating gas creatures known as Nethics swirled their colors in patterns that somehow felt like mockery. The Prime Speaker raised one of his metal arms to quiet the crowd. "These soft creatures have barely learned how to travel between stars. Their fastest ship took them 6 months to reach our space, when any of our vessels could make the same trip in just a few days." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Jake could feel his face getting hot with embarrassment, but he forced himself to stay calm. Lisa reached over and touched his arm, reminding him to keep his cool. A Vortani delegate stood up next. Her body looked like it was made of living diamond, and when she moved, rainbow colors danced across her surface. "I have studied their military capabilities," she said, her voice sounding like wind chimes. "Their largest warship, the USS Liberty, carries only 200 crew members. Our smallest patrol craft has more firepower." The mechanical Cortons began making a humming sound that their translator said meant amusement. One of them, a being that looked like a walking tank made of black metal, spoke up. "We have observed their conflicts. They still use chemical explosives and metal bullets. How primitive." Dr. Bennett leaned forward and whispered to Jake, "Should we tell them about our other capabilities?" Jake shook his head slightly. "Not yet." "Let them talk?" The Nethic representative floated closer to the center of the chamber. Its gas-like body swirled with purple and orange colors. "We have watched their planet for several cycles. They fight wars among themselves over simple resources like oil and land. They have not even united their own world under one government. And their biology," added another Zephyrian, "they are so fragile. They need specific air to breathe. They can only live in a narrow temperature range, and they die after just 80 of their planet's rotations around their star. Most of us live for thousands of years." The chamber filled with sounds of agreement from dozens of different species. Jake watched as beings that looked like walking trees nodded their branch-like heads, while others that resembled giant seahorses made bubbling sounds of approval. Lisa finally stood up. The chamber grew quiet as thousands of alien eyes, sensors, and other sensing organs focused on her. She looked so small standing there, but her voice was clear and strong. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, "we understand that humanity may seem primitive compared to your great civilizations. We are young, we are small, and we are still learning about the galaxy." "Indeed you are," interrupted the Prime Speaker, his mandibles clicking in what Jake now knew was Zephyrian laughter. Lisa continued without showing any emotion. "But we believe that youth can bring new ideas. We may be small, but we are determined. We may be learning, but we learn quickly. A Corton delegate made a sound like grinding gears. What could you possibly offer to this council? Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your ships are slow and weak. Your weapons are toys compared to ours. We offer our perspective, Lisa said. We offer our willingness to work and learn. We offer our friendship. The laughter that followed was even louder than before. Jake felt his hands clench into fists under the table, but he kept his face calm. The Prime Speaker stood up again. Young humans, your enthusiasm is noted. But the Galactic Council is not a charity organization. We do not accept members based on good intentions. We require real contributions to galactic security, technology, or commerce. He gestured toward a huge screen that showed images of Earth and the solar system. Your entire star system has a total population of less than 8 billion beings. The Corton Empire alone governs over 40,000 worlds with trillions of citizens. The Vortani Confederation controls entire sectors of space with resources beyond your understanding. Your single habitable planet, added a Vortani delegate, produces less energy in a year than one of our mining stations generates in a day. Dr. Bennett stood up next to Lisa. We understand the scale difference. But humans have always achieved great things, despite being outnumbered or outgunned. We survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. We built civilizations and reached for the stars, even when we were alone in the universe. Touching, said the Nethic representative, its colors swirling in patterns that Jake's translator said meant sarcasm. But survival instincts and determination do not qualify a species for council membership. We need evidence of advanced technology, military power, or unique resources. The Prime Speaker looked directly at Jake. Commander Morrison, perhaps you would like to demonstrate your ship's capabilities? Show us what human military engineering can accomplish. Jake stood up slowly. Around the chamber he could see alien beings leaning forward with interest. But it was the kind of interest someone might have watching a child try to lift a heavy weight. They expected to be entertained by human failure. The USS Liberty is indeed our representative vessel, Jake said carefully. She has served humanity well in our exploration of local space. Local space, repeated a Corton delegate with mechanical laughter. You mean your own solar system? We would be happy to demonstrate our ship's abilities, Jake continued, ignoring the interruption. Though I suspect our methods might be different from what you are used to seeing. The Prime Speaker's mandibles clicked rapidly. Excellent. We shall arrange a demonstration during our next War Games exercise. All council members will attend to observe your primitive weapons in action. As the session ended and the aliens began filing out of the chamber, Jake could hear their continued laughter and comments. He caught fragments through his translator. Amusing creatures, harmless primitives, and this should be entertaining. Lisa, Alex, and Jake walked silently back to their small transport ship. Only when they were safely inside with the doors sealed did any of them speak. Well, Lisa said, sitting down heavily in her chair, that went about as badly as we expected. Alex shook his head. They think we are nothing more than clever animals? Did you see how they looked at us? Jake activated the secure communication system and sent a coded message back to Earth. Then he turned to his companions with a small smile. Let them think what they want, he said quietly. In 3 days, they will learn that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one you underestimate. 3 days had passed since the humiliating meeting at the Galactic Council. Commander Jake Morrison stared out the window of Kepler Station, watching the swirling clouds of the gas giant below. The human outpost was small compared to the massive alien structures they had seen, but it was home for now. The station had only 50 people living on it. It floated in orbit around the giant planet, far from Earth but still in what the aliens called neutral space. This was humanity's first real foothold outside their own solar system, and now it felt like it might be their last. Jake walked through the narrow corridors toward the main briefing room. The walls were made of simple metal panels, nothing fancy, like the crystal and energy constructs the aliens used. Everything here was built by human hands with human technology. And right now that felt both comforting and inadequate. Dr. Alex Bennett was already in the briefing room when Jake arrived. He had papers spread all over the table and looked like he had not slept in days. His hair was messy and his eyes were red from staring at computer screens. "The official decision came through an hour ago," Alex said without looking up from his papers. "The Galactic Council has classified us as a pre-industrial species. They say we do not qualify for membership and are restricted to our home system for the next 50 years. Jake sat down hard in his chair. 50 years meant that most of the people alive today would never see humanity join the galactic community. It meant Earth would remain isolated while other species expanded across the stars. Lisa Carter came into the room carrying a cup of coffee. She looked tired too, but her diplomat training helped her hide it better than the others. "It gets worse," she said, setting down her cup. "They are treating us like children who need to be protected from the big scary galaxy. We are not even allowed to establish trade relationships with other species. They think we are too primitive to handle contact with advanced civilizations," Alex added, finally looking up from his papers. "According to their records, we are the least advanced species they have ever encountered that managed to achieve faster than light travel." Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "What about the other species that got rejected? Surely we are not the first." Lisa shook her head. "That's just it. No one gets rejected. The Council has been around for over 10,000 years, and every species that has applied for membership has been accepted. We are the first." The three humans sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window, the gas giant storms raged across its surface, bands of color twisting and churning in patterns that would have been beautiful if they had been in a better mood. Alex picked up one of his papers. "The Corton Empire alone controls 30,000 worlds. Their population is in the trillions. One of their mining operations produces more energy in a single day than our entire planet uses in a year." "And the Vortani," Lisa added. "Their technology is so advanced that they can reshape matter at the molecular level. They do not even need to mine resources anymore. They just convert one element into another." Jake stood up and walked to the communication console. "Well, maybe it is time they learned that humans do not give up easily." He activated the long-range communicator and entered a special code. The machine hummed for several minutes as it established a connection across the vast distance to Earth. Finally, the screen flickered to life, and General Pete Hayes appeared. The general looked exactly like what people expected a military leader to look like. His hair was gray, his face was weathered from years of hard decisions, and his eyes were sharp and alert. He wore a simple uniform with just enough medals to show he had earned his position. "Commander Morrison," the general said, his voice coming through clearly despite the distance. "I have been monitoring the situation from here. The President and the Joint Chiefs have been following every detail of the Council meetings. Sir, they have completely shut us out," Jake reported. "They will not even consider us for junior membership. As far as the galaxy is concerned, humanity does not exist." General Hayes nodded grimly. "We expected this might happen. That is why the President authorized me to give you some new information. Project Phantom is now active." The three humans exchanged glances. They had heard whispers about Project Phantom, but none of them knew what it actually was. It was classified at the highest levels of Earth's government. Project Phantom has been our most secret military development for the past 10 years, Hayes explained. "We knew that someday we would encounter other intelligent species, and we knew we would probably be outgunned. So we developed a different approach." Alex leaned forward. "What kind of approach, sir?" "The kind that our enemies cannot fight if they cannot find it," Hayes said with a slight smile. "The USS Vengeance has been traveling toward your position for the past week. She should arrive within 72 hours. "The USS Vengeance?" Lisa asked. "I do not recognize that ship name from any of our fleet records, because it does not officially exist," Hayes replied. "Captain Ryan Brooks is in command, with Lieutenant Commander Amy Sullivan as his first officer. They have been testing our new stealth technology for the past 2 years. Jake felt a spark of hope for the first time in days. Stealth technology? You mean like radar invisibility? Much more advanced than that, Hayes said. The Vengeance uses quantum displacement fields to bend space around the ship. To any sensor, the area where the ship is located appears to be empty space. Light, gravity, electromagnetic radiation, everything gets redirected around the vessel. Doctor? Bennett's eyes went wide. That is theoretically possible, but the energy requirements would be enormous. You would need a power source equivalent to a small star. We found a way, Hayes said simply. The details are still classified, but let me just say that human engineering found solutions that alien science never considered. Lisa was already pulling up star charts on her tablet. The Galactic Council is planning their annual war games in 2 weeks. Every member species sends their most advanced warships to demonstrate their military capabilities. Where are these war games taking place? Hayes asked. The Proxima Drift asteroid field, Jake answered. It is about 3 days' travel from here. They have invited us to observe as potential future participants. Hayes chuckled, but it was not a happy sound. How thoughtful of them. They want to show us exactly how outclassed we are. That was the plan, Lisa said. Every species brings their most powerful ships and weapons. It is supposed to be a demonstration of galactic military might. Perfect, Hayes said, his smile becoming more genuine. Let them have their demonstration. Captain Brooks has been looking forward to showing off his ship's capabilities. Alex was still thinking about the technical aspects. Sir, if what you are saying is true, then the Vengeance could observe the entire war games without being detected. We could learn about alien military tactics and technology. That is certainly one possibility, Hayes agreed. But I think Captain Brooks has something more dramatic in mind. Jake felt his pulse quicken. What do you mean, sir? The aliens think humans are primitive because they judge us by what they can see, Hayes explained. Our oldest ships, our simplest weapons, our basic technology. They never considered that a species smart enough to develop faster than light travel might also be smart enough to hide their real capabilities. Lisa caught on quickly. You want us to let them show off their advanced weapons and ships, and then reveal that we have been watching the entire time. The psychological impact would be enormous, Alex added. If we can appear out of nowhere in the middle of their war games, it would completely change their perception of human capabilities, Hayes nodded. The Vengeance is not just invisible to sensors. It is also armed with weapons technology that will make alien dreadnoughts look like toys. Captain Brooks has been waiting 2 years for permission to demonstrate what human military engineering can really accomplish. Jake looked at his companions. For the first time since arriving at the Galactic Council, he felt like they had a real chance. When will the Vengeance arrive? Captain Brooks will contact you when he reaches the system, Hayes said. Until then, maintain normal operations. Act like disappointed diplomats who are planning to observe the war games and then return home, with their tails between their legs. That should not be hard to fake, Lisa said with bitter humor. It is exactly how we feel right now. Just remember, Hayes said as the communication started to fade, the aliens laughed at humanity because they thought we were weak and primitive. Let them keep thinking that for just a little while longer. The screen went dark, leaving the three humans alone in the briefing room. Outside, the gas giant continued its eternal dance, but now the storms did not look quite so threatening. Jake stood up and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the USS Vengeance was traveling through space completely invisible to any alien sensors. In just a few days, the galaxy would discover that humanity had been holding back their real strength. Well, Lisa said, breaking the silence, this should be interesting. Alex was already making notes about what they might learn from observing alien military technology. The war games will give us intelligence on at least 20 different species. Even if our plan fails, the information will be valuable. The Proxima Drift asteroid field stretched out like a frozen ocean of rock and ice. Massive chunks of stone, some as large as mountains, drifted slowly through space in ancient patterns. This was where the galaxy's most powerful civilizations came to show off their military might. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Crystalline Eye, a Vortani ship that sparkled like a giant diamond. Through the transparent walls, he could see the assembled fleet of alien warships positioning themselves throughout the asteroid field. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Next to him, Dr. Alex Bennett counted the ships with wide eyes. "I count over 300 vessels from 47 different species. Some of those ships are bigger than our space stations." Lisa Carter maintained her diplomatic composure, but Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. They were here as observers, invited to watch the aliens demonstrate why humanity was not ready to join their club. It felt like being invited to watch your own execution. Captain X9 floated over to them. The Vortani looked like a walking crystal sculpture, his body made of what appeared to be living diamond. When he moved, rainbow colors danced across his surface. "Welcome, humans, to the greatest display of military power in the galaxy," he said, his voice sounding like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We appreciate the invitation," Lisa replied politely, though Jake could hear the strain in her voice. "You will learn much today," Captain X9 continued, his tone making it clear he thought they were children being taught a lesson. "Perhaps in 50 years, when your species has advanced sufficiently, you might field vessels worthy of such an assembly." Through the observation windows, Jake watched as the first demonstration began. A Corton Empire destroyer moved into position near a cluster of large asteroids. The ship was sleek and angular, its dark metal hull covered in glowing energy lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Observe the Corton Nova-class destroyer Eternal Blade," Captain X9 announced, as if he were a teacher showing students a particularly interesting specimen. Length, 8 kilometers. Crew, 50,000. Main weapon, antimatter annihilation. Cannon. The Corton ship's main gun began to glow with a light so bright it hurt to look at directly. Energy crackled along the weapon's length as it charged up. When it fired, the beam that emerged was like a piece of captured sunlight. The antimatter beam struck the largest asteroid in the cluster and simply erased it from existence. One moment there was a rock the size of a city floating in space, and the next moment there was nothing but empty vacuum and a brief flash of energy. The other asteroids in the cluster were pushed away by the force of the explosion. "Impressive," Dr. Bennett whispered, making notes on his tablet. "Complete matter conversion." The energy release was equivalent to several nuclear weapons. Captain X9's crystalline body chimed with satisfaction. The Corton Empire maintains a fleet of over 10,000 such vessels. Each one could destroy your largest cities with a single shot. Jake said nothing, but he thought about the message Captain Brooks had sent them yesterday. The USS Vengeance had arrived in the system and was already observing the war games from an invisible position somewhere nearby. The thought made him feel slightly better about watching humanity's future enemies show off their weapons. The next demonstration came from the Zephyrian Collective. Instead of one large ship, they deployed a swarm of smaller vessels that emerged from massive carrier ships like angry insects. Each individual ship was about the size of a human fighter, but there were thousands of them moving in perfect coordination. "The Zephyrian Battle Swarm," Captain X9 explained. "Each drone is controlled by a hive mind intelligence. They can strip mine an entire asteroid field in minutes and convert the raw materials into fuel and ammunition." Jake watched in fascination. As the swarm descended on a section of the asteroid field, the small ships worked with incredible efficiency, using energy beams to cut the rocks into precise chunks. Other drones collected the pieces and fed them into mobile processing units that somehow turned solid rock into usable materials. Within 10 minutes, an area of space that had contained dozens of asteroids was completely empty. The swarm had consumed everything and grown larger in the process, with new drones being constructed from the harvested materials. "Self-replicating military technology," Alex murmured, still taking notes. "They could theoretically consume an entire solar system and turn it into warships." "The collective maintains 12 hive fleets," Captain X9 said with obvious pride, "in the galactic community's power. each one capable of overwhelming any planetary defense system through sheer numbers. The third demonstration was even more unsettling. A Nethic bioship moved into position, its hull looking more grown than built. The vessel appeared to be alive, with organic curves and surfaces that pulsed like skin. As they watched, the ship extended tentacle-like appendages toward a group of asteroids. "Nethic biotechnology," Captain X9 chimed. "Their ships are living creatures bred for war. This vessel can manipulate matter at the molecular level." The bioship's tentacles touched the asteroids, and Jake watched in amazement as the rocks began to change shape. Solid stone flowed like liquid, reshaping itself into geometric patterns. Some asteroids became perfect spheres, others formed complex lattice structures, and a few were converted into what looked like additional ship components. "Molecular manipulation," Alex breathed. "They are rearranging the atomic structure of solid matter. The energy requirements should be impossible. The Nethic Union breeds ships like these in vast biological factories," Captain X9 explained. "Each vessel is a unique life form with capabilities that conventional technology cannot match." As the demonstrations continued, Jake felt a growing sense of despair despite knowing about the vengeance. The sheer scale of alien military power was overwhelming. Even with their secret weapon, humanity seemed tiny compared to these galactic empires. The fourth demonstration came from a species Jake had not seen before. The Valdari appeared to be made of liquid metal, and their ships looked like they were constructed from the same material. When the Valdari vessel approached an asteroid, it simply flowed around the rock like water, completely engulfing it. "Valdari phase technology," Captain X9 announced. "They can shift their molecular structure between solid and liquid states at will. Their ships can pass through solid matter or become impenetrable barriers as needed." Jake watched as the Valdari ship solidified around the asteroid, crushing it into a compact ball of compressed rock. Then the ship flowed away, leaving behind a perfectly spherical object that had once been an irregular chunk of stone. More demonstrations followed, each one more impressive than the last. Ships that could fold space to teleport instantly across the battlefield. Weapons that could age their targets to dust in seconds. Defensive systems that existed in parallel dimensions and were completely immune to normal attacks. "Your turn approaches." "Humans," announced Prime Speaker Vex of the Zephyrians, his mechanical voice carrying clearly across the communication channels. All the alien ships had been monitoring the human observers throughout the demonstrations. Jake could see the USS Liberty moving slowly into position. Humanity's official representative vessel looked pathetically small compared to the alien dreadnoughts. Its hull was scarred from micrometeorite impacts, and its weapon systems were clearly based on primitive kinetic energy principles. "Perhaps your vessel can demonstrate how humans harvest asteroids with their mining equipment," Prime Speaker Vex continued, his tone dripping with condescension. Captain Ben Rogers' voice came over the communication system from the Liberty. "We would be happy to show you our capabilities," he said, maintaining professional dignity despite the obvious mockery. The Liberty approached a medium-sized asteroid and deployed what looked like conventional mining equipment. Mechanical arms extended from the ship's hull, and simple cutting lasers began slicing away chunks of rock. To the alien observers, it must have looked incredibly primitive compared to the matter conversion and molecular manipulation they had just witnessed. "How quaint," commented a Corton observer. "They still use mechanical tools and coherent light beams." "Such patience," added a Vortani delegate. "It would take them days to process what our ships can handle in minutes." Jake gritted his teeth, but said nothing. The Liberty's demonstration was exactly what the aliens expected from a primitive species. Simple, slow, and inefficient. It was perfect misdirection. Just as Captain Rogers was completing the modest mining demonstration, every sensor system in the alien fleet suddenly began screaming warnings. Alarm sounds filled the communication channels as sensor operators from dozens of different species reported the same impossible readings. "Massive gravitational anomaly detected," reported a Corton technician, his mechanical voice crackling with static. Source unknown, mass displacement readings are off the scale. Captain X9's crystalline form shifted from blue to deep red, which Jake's translator indicated meant extreme alarm among the Vortani. My sensors show a massive object directly above the fleet, but visual confirmation shows nothing but empty space. The USS Vengeance materialized out of nothingness like a mountain appearing from fog. The massive human warship stretched 15 kilometers from bow to stern, dwarfing even the largest alien dreadnoughts in the assembled fleet. Its hull was not the familiar metal of conventional ships, but something that seemed to absorb light itself, creating patches of controlled darkness against the starfield. Complete silence fell across the communication channels. On every alien bridge, crews stared in stunned disbelief at the impossible sight. The ship had been sitting invisible above them for hours, undetected by the most advanced sensor arrays in the galaxy. Commander Jake Morrison watched the alien reactions with quiet satisfaction. Captain X9's crystalline body had gone completely colorless, which Jake's translator indicated meant total shock among the Vortani. On nearby alien vessels, he could see crew members pressed against windows, their various forms of eyes and sensors focused on the human ship that had appeared from nowhere. Captain Ryan Brooks's voice cut through the stunned silence, calm and professional despite the chaos his appearance had caused. "This is Captain Brooks of the United Earth Space Command vessel Vengeance. We apologize for our late arrival to the demonstration." The first response came from a Corton ship. Its mechanical voice filled with disbelief. "Impossible. Our sensors would have detected any vessel of that size. The gravitational displacement alone should have been obvious to every ship in the fleet." Lieutenant Commander Amy Sullivan's voice joined the conversation, providing technical details that sent shockwaves through the alien listeners. The Vengeance utilizes quantum displacement stealth technology, dimensional shielding, and weapon systems based on controlled gravitational manipulation. "We have been observing your exercises with great interest." Dr. Alex Bennett finally spoke up from the observation deck of the Crystalline Eye, his voice carrying to the entire fleet through the open communication channels. "The beauty of quantum displacement is that it folds space-time around the vessel. Light, gravity, electromagnetic radiation, even exotic particles are all redirected around the ship's position. To your sensors, this area appeared to be empty space because that is exactly what your instruments were designed to detect." Prime. Speaker Vex of the Zephyrians clicked his mandibles rapidly, a sound that Jake now recognized as extreme agitation. "How long has this vessel been in our vicinity?" "We arrived 3 days ago," Captain Brooks replied matter-of-factly. "We have complete sensor records of all fleet movements, communication intercepts, and detailed scans of every vessel present. Your demonstration has been most educational. The implications hit the alien fleet like a physical blow. Not only had humanity built a ship larger than anything they possessed, but it had been spying on them undetected for days. Every tactical formation, every weapons test, every private communication between ships had been monitored by the humans they had dismissed as primitive. Nethic bioship pulsed with colors that Jake's translator said indicated fear and confusion. "Your stealth technology violates several known laws of physics. Matter cannot simply disappear from normal space without leaving detectable traces." "You are correct about conventional stealth systems," Lieutenant Commander Sullivan explained. "However, our approach does not hide the ship from sensors. Instead, it convinces sensors that they are looking at empty space by redirecting all forms of energy and matter around the vessel's location. The ship remains in normal space-time, but occupies what we call a quantum shadow." Captain X9 managed to regain enough composure to speak, though his crystalline form was still flickering with unstable colors. "Even if your stealth technology is genuine, a ship of that size would require enormous power sources. The energy needed to displace that much space-time would rival the output of a small star." "An interesting observation," Captain Brooks said, and Jake could hear the slight amusement in his voice. "Perhaps we should demonstrate some of our other technological capabilities." What followed redefined everyone's understanding of what was possible in space warfare. The USS Vengeance did not simply move through the asteroid field, it manipulated it. Using controlled gravitational fields, the massive human warship began moving entire asteroids. Like a child arranging toys. Jake watched in amazement as rocks the size of cities shifted position at the Vengeance's command. Asteroids that had been drifting in chaotic patterns for millions of years suddenly aligned themselves into perfect geometric formations. Some were pulled together to form defensive barriers, while others were arranged into complex three-dimensional structures that served no obvious purpose except to show that it could be done. Gravitational manipulation on this scale should be impossible, whispered a Vortani scientist over the communication channels. The energy requirements would destabilize local space-time. Your understanding of energy requirements is based on conventional physics, Dr. Bennett explained from his position on the observation deck. Human science has developed some unconventional approaches to solving traditional problems. The real shock came when Captain Brooks ordered a weapons demonstration. Instead of the energy beams or projectiles that the aliens were familiar with, the Vengeance's main cannon created something that made Jake's skin crawl just looking at it. A tiny point of absolute darkness appeared at the weapon's muzzle, no larger than a marble, but somehow drawing light into itself from the surrounding space. The point moved slowly toward a large asteroid, leaving a trail of bent starlight behind it like a wake in reality itself. When the dark point reached the asteroid, it simply touched the surface and began to consume the rock from within. This was not the violent destruction of antimatter weapons or the molecular conversion of nethic biotechnology. This was something far more fundamental and terrifying. The asteroid collapsed inward on itself, rock and metal flowing toward the dark point like water circling a drain. But instead of creating debris or energy, the entire massive rock simply ceased to exist, leaving behind nothing but twisted space-time that gradually returned to normal. Controlled micro-singularity, Lieutenant Commander Sullivan announced. Casually, as if she were describing the weather, the artificial black hole consumes matter and converts it directly into usable energy, which is then channeled back into the ship's power systems. Very efficient and environmentally friendly since there is no waste product. The alien fleet maintained what Jake could only describe as a respectful distance as the demonstration continued. Ships that had been positioning themselves for optimal viewing angles now backed away to what they hoped were safe ranges. "Your point defense systems?" asked a Corton admiral, his mechanical voice carefully controlled. "What principles do they operate on?" "Temporal displacement," Captain Brooks replied. "Incoming projectiles or energy beams are caught in localized time dilation fields that slow them to manageable speeds. We can then either redirect the attacks back at their source or simply allow them to harmlessly dissipate over extended time periods." A Zephyrian battle swarm that had been maintaining formation near the human ship suddenly scattered, their hive-mind intelligence apparently deciding that close proximity to the Vengeance was unwise. "And you're faster than light propulsion?" inquired a nethic bioship, its organic hull pulsing with nervous energy. "We do not use faster-than-light travel in the conventional sense," Lieutenant Commander Sullivan explained. "The Vengeance can create localized space-time distortions that allow us to step outside normal physics temporarily. From our perspective, we simply move from one location to another instantaneously. The universe catches up with us afterward." Jake could see alien crew members through the transparent sections of their ships, and their body language was unmistakable across species barriers. These were beings who had considered themselves the masters of galactic technology, suddenly confronted with capabilities that seemed like magic. Captain Zex-9 turned to face the human delegation on his observation deck. His crystalline form was now cycling through colors that Jake's translator could not even identify, suggesting emotional states that had no equivalent in human experience. "How long has humanity possessed this technology?" he asked, his wind chime voice barely above a whisper. Lisa Carter stepped forward, her diplomatic training allowing her to maintain perfect composure even in this unprecedented situation. "The Vengeance is our first-generation stealth dreadnought," Captain Zex-9, Our shipyards have been producing the second-generation fleet for the past 2 years. The silence that followed was profound. Every alien in the fleet was processing the same terrible realization. Humanity had not just built one impossible warship. They had been building an entire fleet of them while the galaxy dismissed them as primitive. "How many ships like this do you possess?" Prime Speaker Vex asked, his mechanical voice betraying what Jake suspected was fear. "That information is classified," Captain Brooks replied diplomatically. "However, I can tell you that the Vengeance is not alone in this system." As if summoned by his words, space around the fleet began shimmering in dozens of locations. The quantum shadows of additional human vessels became visible as distortions in starlight, revealing the presence of ships that had been watching and waiting. The silence in space was broken by the sound of Captain Brooks clearing his throat over the communication channels. The USS Vengeance floated motionless among the asteroid field, its dark hull seeming to drink in the light from nearby stars. Around it, the shimmer of cloaked human vessels created a ghostly outline of a fleet that the aliens were only now beginning to comprehend. "I believe we have sufficiently demonstrated our defensive capabilities," Captain Brooks said, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who held all the cards in a deadly game. "However, the Earth delegation has requested that we also show our commitment to peaceful coexistence." Commander Jake Morrison felt a surge of pride as he watched the alien fleet maintain their careful distance from the human ships. These were the same beings who had laughed at humanity just days ago, dismissing them as primitive creatures barely worthy of notice. Now they waited with obvious nervousness to see what the humans would do next. The demonstration that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Instead of using their gravitational manipulation technology for destruction, the crew of the Vengeance began to create. They selected a cluster of medium-sized asteroids and began reshaping them with the same casualties that a sculptor might work with clay. Jake watched in fascination as the asteroids flowed and merged under the influence of controlled gravity fields. What had been random chunks of rock and ice became something entirely different. The Vengeance was building a structure in space, using the raw materials of the asteroid field as construction materials. Within 30 minutes, a perfect sphere hung in space where the asteroid cluster had been. The sphere was hollow, Jake realized. As he watched atmosphere being generated inside through processes he could not begin to understand. Artificial gravity pulled the newly created air into a stable environment, and soon there was a small world floating in the void. "A habitat sphere?" Dr. Alex Bennett breathed, his scientific mind struggling to process what he was seeing. They just created a livable environment from raw asteroids in less than an hour. Captain Zex-9's crystalline form was cycling through colors so rapidly that Jake's translator could not keep up with the emotional states being displayed. "This is impossible," the Vortani officer whispered. "The energy required to convert matter on that scale, to create atmosphere from nothing, to establish stable gravity fields, it violates everything we know about physics. Human physics operates on different principles than galactic standard," Lieutenant Commander Amy Sullivan explained over the communication system. "We found that conventional science was too limiting for our needs, so we developed some alternative approaches. The newly created habitat was not empty for long. The Vengeance deployed what appeared to be construction drones, but these machines were unlike anything in the alien fleet. They moved through space without visible propulsion, manipulated matter without mechanical tools, and worked with a precision that seemed almost alive. In another hour, the bare habitat sphere had been transformed into something that looked like a garden world. Forests appeared on the inner surface, oceans formed in the low areas, and even weather patterns began to develop in the artificial atmosphere. It was a complete ecosystem, created from nothing but asteroids and human technology. "We call this terraforming," Captain Brooks announced to the stunned alien fleet. "It is one of our more peaceful applications of gravitational manipulation. We have found it useful for creating livable worlds and systems that would otherwise be uninhabitable." The implications sent shockwaves through the alien observers. Humanity could not only build invisible warships with impossible weapons, they could create entire worlds from raw materials. Every species in the galaxy had spent thousands of years searching for habitable planets, fighting wars over the rare worlds that could support life. Humans could apparently make their own. A Corton. Admiral Wall was the first to break the stunned silence. United Earth Delegation, his mechanical voice carefully formal. The Corton Empire wishes to extend an official invitation for immediate diplomatic relations. We believe we may have underestimated humanity's potential contributions to galactic civilization. The response was immediate and universal. Every species present began broadcasting similar messages. The Vortani offered technology exchanges, though Jake suspected they were now more interested in learning from humans than teaching them. The Zephyrians proposed joint exploration missions. The Nephic requested cultural ambassadors and trade agreements. Even the proud Valdari, whose liquid metal technology had seemed so advanced just hours ago, formally requested permission to study human gravitational manipulation techniques. They offered to share their own phase-shifting abilities in exchange for lessons in TERRAFORMING. Commander Morrison opened a communication channel to the entire assembled fleet. The Earth delegation appreciates these generous offers. However, we believe these discussions should take place in the proper forum. We would like to formally resubmit our application for Galactic Council membership. Granted, came the immediate response from Prime Speaker Vex, his mechanical voice carrying none of its earlier condescension. The Zephyrian Collective votes to accept humanity as a full member of the Galactic Council with complete voting privileges and immediate access to all Council resources. Seconded by the Corton Empire, added the Admiral, his tone now respectful rather than mocking. The Vortani Confederation agrees, chimed Captain Zex9, his crystalline form now glowing with colors that Jake's translator indicated meant deep respect and perhaps a touch of fear. Similar declarations came from every species present. The vote was unanimous, something that Jake later learned had never happened in the 10,000-year history of the Galactic Council. Species that had deliberated for decades over the admission of previous members were falling over themselves to welcome humanity into their ranks. Dr. Bennett leaned close to Jake and whispered, "They are not just accepting us as members. They are treating us like the dominant power in the galaxy." Jake nodded, watching as alien warships that had seemed impossibly advanced just hours ago now appeared primitive compared to the human vessels. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted completely, and everyone present knew it. Captain Brooks allowed the diplomatic chaos to continue for several minutes before speaking again. "The crew of the Vengeance thanks you for your warm welcome. However, we have completed our demonstration and must return to our patrol duties." "Patrol duties?" asked a Nephic bioship, its organic hull pulsing with curious colors. "The Vengeance is just one ship in Earth's defensive fleet," Lieutenant Commander Sullivan explained matter-of-factly. "We have responsibilities in other systems that require our attention." The casual mention of Earth having multiple defensive fleets sent another shock through the alien observers. They had assumed the Vengeance was humanity's greatest achievement, their single most advanced vessel. The possibility that it was just one ship among many was almost too much to process. As the demonstration concluded, the human vessels began to cloak once again. One by one, the quantum shadows that had revealed their presence faded away, leaving only empty space where moments before there had been the most advanced fleet anyone had ever seen, the USS Vengeance was the last to disappear. Captain Brooks opened a final communication to the assembled alien fleet. "Humanity looks forward to working with all of you as partners in the Galactic Council. We believe that together we can accomplish great things." Then the massive warship folded space around itself and vanished, taking with it any lingering doubts about human technological capabilities. Commander Morrison turned to his companions as they prepared to return to Earth. The rejection that had seemed so devastating just days ago now felt like ancient history. Humanity had not only gained admission to the Galactic Council, they had established themselves as one of its most powerful members. Well, Lisa Carter said, finally allowing herself to smile, that went better than expected. Dr. Bennett was still taking notes, his scientific mind trying to catalog everything they had witnessed. The terraforming demonstration alone will revolutionize galactic colonization efforts. If we can create habitable worlds from raw materials, it solves the resource conflicts that have driven galactic politics for millennia. Jake looked out at the stars, knowing that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer the primitive species begging for acceptance. They were the new power that everyone else wanted to understand and befriend. The aliens had laughed at humanity because they judged them by their oldest, most visible technology. They had seen the USS Liberty and assumed it represented the best humans could achieve. They never considered that a species clever enough to develop faster than light travel might also be clever enough to hide their true capabilities until the moment was right to reveal them. In the months that followed, human diplomatic influence grew rapidly throughout the galaxy. Human terraforming technology revolutionized colonization efforts, making previously worthless systems into valuable real estate. Human stealth capabilities changed military doctrine across dozens of species, as everyone tried to develop countermeasures for weapons they could not detect.